Item number 11, expansion of the city's sphere of influence, southerly boundary line for new development opportunities. Mr. Bush.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This before you tonight is first part of a potentially exciting project for the City of Yuba City, and I'm pleased to present this to you tonight for your consideration. Specifically, what we're looking at is back in October of last year, the City Council, along with the Sutter County Board of Supervisors, held a joint special workshop. And among other things discussed at that meeting was the possibility of expanding the city's sphere of influence boundary south of Bogue Road to create some new development opportunities that would result in job-creating opportunities for the city and for the region. At that particular meeting, the city looked at a variety of different potential areas that are within the existing city limits, but came to the conclusion that south of city limits might be the best possible alternative. And at that meeting, both elected groups directed their staffs to start looking at the potential for doing that. So this right here is our current city limits. The red represents the city limits. The green represents the sphere of influence. And this was the exhibit that we shared with you back in October and looked at, evaluating where's some opportunities within the city. And after, some lengthy discussion, it worked out that down here, south of the city limits, was the most logical opportunity for us because of access issues and then lack of infrastructure issues up over here. So this is the area that was put in question, and again, this is our existing sphere of influence and city limits down here. But as part of the Sutter County General Plan update, they included a boundary line here of a possible sphere of influence adjustment. There's no particular science that was put in place to come up with this boundary, but it represented a fairly logical boundary at the time to be included. And what that does, it doesn't give us anything really legally, but it sets the tone for some dialogue discussion about expanding our sphere down in this area. Here's a blow-up of that area. Bogue Road again down here, Highway 99 down here. Well, since that time in October, we've received a development project proposal from Newcomb Ranch Group. And Newcomb Ranch is a group of private property owners that is looking to propose a mixed-use master plan south of Bogue Road. Specifically, they're looking to expand the city's sphere of influence boundary for approximately 210 acres. And that project would include a boundary adjustment to the sphere of influence, pre-annexation zoning and land use, going through LAFCO, a technical master plan, the required environmental review, and the development agreement. In addition to that, they're also looking to do an expanded technical master plan for beyond their property down to Stewart Road between the city limits. And I'll share some maps with you in just a moment for that. Again, here's that possible sphere of influence boundary line down here, existing city limits here. So where they're looking at is that there's approximately 161 acres owned by the Newcomb Ranch Group, and that's denoted here. Okay, Highway 99, Stewart Road. They also have other property owners that represent control of about 48 acres up over here, and that connects with the existing city limits at this point. The expanded technical master plan that I referenced just a moment ago is this area right here. So it connects with the existing city limits down to Stewart Road. So we've included in this item their proposal to you, to the city, to go ahead and process that project. But one of the things that staff wanted to include as part of this presentation to you tonight is that this represents a unique opportunity for us to go out and talk to other folks about coming into the city's sphere of influence. And again, here's that boundary line that we identified in the county general plan. And so while these folks are coming to the table, these different ones here, and we're doing some technical studies over here as part of this project, staff believes that it's important to go ahead and talk to these other property owners out here about the possibility of expanding the sphere, and I'll share that with you here in more detail. So tonight what we're recommending is that before we get started with the project is that we conduct a public outreach effort. To do so, we would use a consultant to survey property owners out there to explain all the processes involved in sphere of influence versus city limits. We would share with them, that process and find out their level of interest. Are they interested? Do they even know that it's available? And then we would give them a specified time to respond, so it couldn't just be sitting out there and hanging on to it. Once that survey was complete, we would come back to the City Council at a future meeting to share with you our findings, and then at that time we would propose potential boundaries as well as funding methodology for going forward. Why are we doing that? Why are we recommending going beyond the proposal that's before you tonight? Well, any expansion of the sphere requires a lot of work. It requires a municipal services review by LAFCO and a lot of other technical studies. We basically have to demonstrate that regardless of the size of the expansion, whether it's 5 acres or 500 acres, we have to do those technical studies, and we have to show that the city is able to provide the necessary services to those properties. It's a timely process, so it's not something that a developer can approach the city and say, hey, I want to do something right away, without going through this process first. And so our thinking is that let's just do this once. Let's go back and talk to all these people in here so that, again, it gives us greater flexibility in potentially expanding the city's limits for things like job housing balances or future economic growth opportunities.
Aaron, just a quick question. If you
Sure.
go back to that map, that map there, you're talking about outreach to the people below, but what about people on the other side of Stewart Road or other side of the highway, you know, where that red line kind of goes? Right there, all of that stuff.
Yes, we would include that. So
Okay.
essentially what we're suggesting is that based on that boundary being out there, and that was something that a long time ago when the City Council met with the board and asked for some consideration of this, we would go out and approach all the property owners in this area, which would also include these people in the green area here. And one of the things that I wanted to provide you with is a distinction between the sphere of influence and the city limits, okay? Because there might be concern as we go out and talk to these people that they do or they do not want to be within the city. But again, as seen here by our existing boundaries, the city limits in red and our sphere out here in green. This just gives us the opportunity at a future date. If you're within the sphere, it means you're still operating in the county and complying with all their guidelines, not the city guidelines. All this does is gives us the opportunity in the future to come back and do future consideration to annex into the city if and when the property owners are ready. So that's kind of this statement here, and I'll spare you reading all that, but the sphere of influence is basically a probability plan for where we could grow, where urban development should go based on services. It does not require city zoning or annexation into the city. Whereas with the city limits, to annex into the city, it does require pre-annexation zoning, and it does require LAFCO approval. So that's what the applicant is proposing as part of their project, is pre-annexation zoning and going through the LAFCO process to bring these components in here. So since we're opening that door, if you will, we figure we just might as well ask the question, put a timeline on it, so we can come back and only do this one time. So that if in the future there's opportunities, they don't have to go through this 1.5, 2-year-long process just to ask that question again. So our recommendation to you tonight is to direct us to go forward with that consultant selection and get started with the outreach efforts. And based on those findings, we'll bring that back to the council and we'll get started on this exciting project.
Questions for Aaron from council members?
No.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Are we having a public meeting, hearing, or is this it?
No,
Aaron.
yes.
You might offer, Aaron, I don't know if the applicant wants to come and address the council on this at all, or?
A representative from Newcomb Ranch is in the audience tonight if you have any questions or like them to say anything.
Would any members of the Newcomb Ranch like to come and address the council?
They'd be asking you, David, I think.
Okay. Well, there's no mad rush, so what's the...
Well,
Question?
I had a couple of
Sure.
questions.
Sure.
I prefer option 2. That was the proposed option, and I'm not too excited about staff coming up with an option 1. We have a current sphere of influence. Plenty of land in that sphere of influence. If you ask pretty much everybody what would want to be in the sphere of influence of the city of Yuba City, I mean, we can go to the Sutter County line, go to the airport. We've done our studies. We have the sphere of influence. We talked about creating jobs and annexing that area, that the piece The Newcomb Ranch, we always wanted to have that. But to just randomly throw in another mile of properties, there's a couple of things. One, cost is borne by the taxpayer, the city then. We've got master plans sitting on the shelf, specific plans sitting on the shelf that are doing nothing. And we spent city money on that, like the Lincoln East specific plan. It wasn't paid by the landowner. We paid for it. How much money are we going to keep spending on these plans when they're not real? The Newcomb plan as proposed, which is option 2, is real. It's a small amount of land. It straightens up the... I have no problem going straight Stewart line. It straightens out the city line. But to just... I have a problem with going... there's no logic going to Berry Road. I mean, we could go to Tudor, and we could go to Live Oak and Buttes. I'm just not thrilled about this. I would like to... For decades, we have a plan. East, Township, Bogue. We went out with the Stewart a little bit. Since then, it made sense to we needed prime industrial commercial land on the highway, and I think that's great with the Newcomb Ranch. But to just go out, just because while we're doing this plan, let's go ahead and throw a bunch of more land in there and ask the landowners about it. I'm just not excited, and I'm not. We got a budget deficit. We're trying to balance. Maybe we're asking our police, fire to take cuts, and then we're going to spend a whole bunch of money to do something that nobody's asking for. Nobody's asking south of Stewart Road that, oh yeah, put me in this sphere of influence. We don't have a shortage of land in our current sphere of influence. We have one landowner proposing. Why don't we stick to that? And then that proposal is proposing to pay its own cost. Why are we changing that proposal to where we're going to be paying for this project, and who knows when, if it gets developed, or if we ever get our money back? Lincoln East specific plan, I think that was 5-6 years ago when we spent the city's money, and we haven't seen a penny back. That's my...
Any other questions, comments from the...
Just to the mayor, just a comment that I have is, I think this is a wise move on the city's part to at least go down to Stewart Road with this, straighten that line out. I would like to see the efforts really made to the north of that in the future with annexing in the keyhole area and completing that whole area up there far quicker, so we can bring in our Beat 6 into police service in a shorter period of time than an effort further to the south. But certainly straightening out the line to Stewart Road makes a lot of sense to me, and I'd be very supportive of that. But I'd like to see our efforts working northward to complete that keyhole area, or the centerpiece up Highway 99 corridor.
Councilman Starkey.
What John said. I don't need to reiterate the whole thing.
I agree with you, Aaron, that we do need to look at the sphere, and by us going to Stewart Road is not annexing.
No,
to,
Stewart.
Yeah, I know.
I'm for Stewart Road.
Right.
Stewart Road.
Right. I just want to clarify. We're not annexing it. This is one step of many steps to come through. If the property owners, obviously the first step is to see if we want to bring the property in the sphere on the boundary line that the county's kind of drawn for us, number one. Number two is go through all the processes. Then at that point in time, perhaps the Newcomb Ranch LLC would want to bring that into the city for various reasons. And the other people may not want to bring it into the city, which is okay too. But if we're looking at this point in time in the larger economy of scales, yes, there's a cost for it. But when you're going to have to go back and do it again in another year, it's going to cost twice as much than it is at this point in time. So if you're allowing, like Aaron said, if we're allowing the door to open, I think it's a fair process for us to explore that idea if the other landowners wish to want the sphere, want to be a part of the sphere. Doesn't mean we're going to develop it. Doesn't mean nothing's going to happen for 20 years, but at least we're looking at those options at one point in time. So I'm in favor of staff's recommendation. But with
If you're
that,
looking for a motion,
okay, got a motion?
I'll make a motion to, that we go with option 2.
I had a question.
Yes, with that, I'll second that motion, but go ahead.
Aaron, we're just talking about the shaded cross-hatched area.
No, actually, just to clarify, so let me back up. So this is property owned by Newcomb Ranch property
Right.
owners. This is other property that is
Right.
with other property owners that are partnering, if you will.
Right.
And that's really necessary, quite honestly, to make the connectivity finding for LAFCO.
Understand?
So in addition to that, they're proposing to prepare a technical master plan for this area. Now, what that means has some interpretation, but what they're doing is doing the technical studies for that, but they are not proposing, as part of their proposal, to do pre-annexation zoning for this.
Understand?
Okay. What we're suggesting is that because we're going out and talking to these people as part of this technical master plan effort, that why not talk to these people over here, talk to these people over here to see what the interest is, because they may or may not be aware of this. We're not committing to anything. It's simply going out and ask a question. Do you want to be a part of this or not?
Okay, thank you.
And how bad do you want to be a partner?
Sure.
Then we would come back to the city council and say, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and then get your feedback on how we proceed.
Seems quite logical to me. Very good. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Bush.
You're welcome.
Great, we've got a motion.
Mr. Mayor, as a point of clarification, I think that Councilman Mon made a motion, and I think you may have seconded it,
Right.
but your second was counter to what you were stating earlier. It sounded like you were proposing option 1, whereas Councilman Mon was proposing option 2. And option 2 is the smaller version.
Yeah.
Option 1 is the broader version. Just
I was
that
going off of what
clarification.
staff's recommendation was, and that was to go after the whole thing.
Right.
So I think you have a motion on the floor from Councilman Mon with regard to option 2
Then you may
that
want
would
to-
require a second.
Yeah, then I want to withdraw my second for that motion. What's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to go with option 1. I mean,
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Mon's motion dies for lack of a second.
Yes.
So now we need another motion.
Go ahead.
I would move option 1.
Okay.
I will second that.
Yeah, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by, you know what, let's get a roll call vote. Terrell?
Councilmember Becklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Starkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Mon,
No.
Mayor Gill.
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.